Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about some of the tips, tricks, and considerations for finding an apartment in New York City and really any city. If you have been following my blog at theclosingbell.com, then you will know that I have been apartment hunting in Manhattan for the past few months. It has been kind of a brutal process, but I think that I finally have things ironed out and I will be moving into my new apartment in the upcoming month. Here are some of the lessons that I learned during my journey that I wanted to share with all of you. Number 1, roommate or not. One of the things that any young professional or recent grad who is looking for their first apartment must consider is whether to live with one roommate or two or more. And there are definitely pros and cons to both sides. With a roommate, the key positives are 1, always having a buddy, and 2, splitting the costs. I personally find a lot of enjoyment in living with another person and always having a friend around. Especially because if you know me, you know I am always forgetting my keys or forgetting my wallet, and it's kind of just nice having a buddy around who can let me back into the apartment if that happens. The second reason is that you can split the rent and utilities with another person to kind of diffuse the costs. And this is especially important in New York City, where the rent is totally astronomical and sometimes it's difficult to afford larger space. So those are the 2 key reasons that having a roommate is helpful, both from an interpersonal perspective as well as from an economical perspective. Some of the cons of living with a roommate include compromising on apartment features, loss of privacy, and sometimes conflicting schedules. With a roommate, you'll have to live in a place that you both agree on, and that might not be your first choice of apartment. A roommate also means that you'll be sharing spaces, so unfortunately for some of us that means you can't be hanging out with no pants on or spending 4,000 hours in the bathroom in the morning getting ready when you both have to be getting to work. If those are things that you think you'll struggle with, maybe it's not such a good idea to live with a roommate after all. Number 2, leasing versus subleasing. The second thing to consider is whether to sign a full lease or to sign a sublease, or as it's more colloquially called in New York, a sublet. The difference is a lease is a legally binding contract between you, the renter, and the owner of the property or the landlord. And a sublease is usually a contract between a renter and another renter, in this case it would be you, the apartment hunter, to take over part of an existing lease. I have done both. A sublet tends to be a shorter contracted time period, sometimes with the option to renew as the new leaseholder at the end of the sublet period. A lease gives you more responsibilities since it is a legal contract with the property owner, but it also gives you more rights. For example, you're able to contact the landlord directly with issues, and you can't be kicked out without good reason. But like I said, a lease also gives you more responsibilities. For example, if you are looking to move out, perhaps you found a new job somewhere else, then it falls on you to find a subletter to take over the rest of your lease. And if the subletter, for whatever reason, bails or refuses to pay rent, the responsibility could fall on you. Number 3, neighborhood. Choosing a neighborhood that works for you is a huge part of moving to a city like New York. I have a friend who will never leave the West Village ever because She just loves the lively restaurants and the social scene there. On the flip side, I have friends who live in the financial district because they like the access to multiple subways there. Some people may refuse to live in certain neighborhoods because they simply don't feel safe in those neighborhoods. For me, the single most important factor is commute time. I chose to look almost exclusively in Midtown because I just want to minimize the amount of time that I have to rely on public transportation or the amount of time that I have to be switching between subway lines. Living in Midtown allows me to actually walk to work. That's something that's important to me. Neighborhood is a very, very personal choice, but remember, you're not bound. Say you live in one neighborhood and you totally didn't feel that it was your vibe. You can definitely move somewhere else for your next apartment. New York just has such diversity in neighborhood feels that you can almost always find something that works for you. Number 4, landlord/building. It's really important to do your homework and be comfortable with not only the landlord that you're renting the property from, but also the building itself. Some buildings offer concierge and valet parking and a gym right in the building, like some of the luxury high-rises that are cropping up in Manhattan. Other buildings might not have these amenities, but could offer a great deal of character or much more space for the rent that you're offered. It's really all about knowing what you value most and looking for those characteristics in the building. Building aside, it's important to have a good, reputable landlord, whether that is a management company or a private individual. I know that some people really regret renting a property from a landlord when they realize that the landlord totally doesn't care that they don't have hot water for 3 weeks even though they have a newborn baby, or the landlord totally ignores some issue they're having. So it's important to kind of do some reference checks and make sure that the person you're agreeing to pay rent to is actually going to uphold their end as the landlord. Number 5, building and municipal policies. It's always important to know and plan to comply with the policies around your building or just citywide land use policies. I'll give you an example. In New York City, there are a lot of flex units, meaning you can choose to put up false walls and divide up the rooms as you wish. This was the case in my first apartment. We decided to put up a false wall to divide one room into 2 bedrooms. That way our rent would overall be less for all the people living in that unit. However, we weren't at the time very familiar with the regulations around that since we had never lived in a flex building before. And it was only after living in that apartment with our false wall for a few months that our apartment was inspected and they told us that our wall was not up to code because we had to have at least 50% of the surface open in order to be in compliance with fire safety regulations. So don't make my mistake. Definitely know your regulations, whether it's around safety or pets, smoking, what have you. Thanks for watching my tips for apartment hunting in New York City. If you are in the process of apartment hunting right now, I wish you the best of luck. I know that it's a terrible, terrible process, but girl, you'll get through it. I have faith in you. And if you enjoyed this video, please, please, please give that thumbs up button some lovin'. And I hope that you will subscribe to catch my next video. Bye!